Sokka frowned as he hurried up the sloping incline of the cave. This was a disaster. He came here to prove to himself that the firebender was evil, not laugh at his jokes and exchange small talk. At this point, his internal evil meter was starting to point the wrong direction, and that was not good. That could lead to bad plans. He made it to the mouth of the cave just as one of the little kids was starting to creep in, large basket in hand. "Hey, whoa!" Sokka interrupted the sneaking. "That's like the one thing I definitely heard Jet say. No one but the official freedom fighters in the cave." The kid puffed out his chest. "I guess he forgot to tell you, he gave me special permission to see the secret today." "Yeah, I know. I'm new, not stupid." Sokka reached forward to grab the basket. Arms freed, the kid folded his arms over his chest in a classic pout position. "It's not fair. I'm almost as old as the Duke." "That seems like a Jet problem," Sokka answered, and the kid stomped his foot, but this time obediently scurried away. The Water Tribe teen waited at the entrance for a few moments, making sure the kid actually left before bringing his thoughts back to his earlier concern. How to prove that the Fire Nation kid was as evil as the Fire Nation people tended to be. He ducked into the hidey hole to check before heading down, and brightened when he spotted his machete still leaning against the wall by the sharpening tools. That was it! Of course the boy didn't seem threatening. The guy was just standing there chained to a wall. A saber-toothed moose lion would look tame like that. But in a battle? That was where you saw the true heart of a warrior. That was perfect. It was a bit of a juggle with the weapon, basket, and torch all in hand. He had to set his blade on the ground and unlock the door when he finally made it there. For once, the firebender, Zuko, wasn't meditating or practicing katas. Instead, he was simply glaring at Sokka, looking at the basket expectantly. "I come with food and weapons, your two favorite things, I'm sure," the Water Tribe teen said with a smirk, picking back up his machete and placing it inside the door. He opened the basket immediately. All of this stress was making him hungry, and considering the hungry was kind of just his default, he was like super hungry now. He pulled out a pair of identical plates of food. "Huh," he said idly, handing one plate over and sitting cross-legged on the ground, right outside the chain radius to start in on his own meal. "Does this mean they're giving me prison food, or—" Zuko rolled his eyes so aggressively that Sokka watched with morbid fascination to see if they were just fallout or something. They didn't. "They want me here to fight. They're not going to starve me." "Okay, point." Sokka wasn't about to admit it, though, so he just shrugged and started in on the roll on the plate. Zuko was attacking a slice of orange melon with a meticulous ferocity that was almost fascinating. He even ate every bit of the thick orange and green striped peel and every bit of the pit separating scarlet triangle sections. Sokka said awkwardly. "Want to trade for your roll or something?" Normally he would just ask for the meat, but he had a feeling this kid needed it more than him. Zuko looked at him suspiciously. His eyes were narrow and untrusting glare as he clutched his tray harder. "Why?" he rasped, as though barely holding on to his fury. "Well, you seem really into that fruit there, buddy." "I'm not your buddy." "And yeah, it's okay, but I don't like it that much, and sometimes these citrusy things hurt my mouth. And bread is, amazing, so I figured it was a win-win." "Fine." They made the switch. Zuko as tense as someone in a hostage negotiation, Sokka with the ease of someone trading favorite dishes with his sister across the igloo. It was becoming increasingly hard to think of the firebender as a threat. Zuko ate the second piece of orange melon with the same thoroughness, only wasting the hard black seeds. There's a vitamin in citrus fruit, good for firebenders. "Oh, huh. Is there a fruit that's good for waterbenders?" "How would I know? I'm not a waterbender," the kid asked with a glare. Sokka lifted his hands in concession. Right. Sorry, jeez." They sat in silence for a few moments, before the guy sighed explosively. "Salt, okay? Waterbenders need a lot of salt." "Huh, that's kinda cool. We use salt a lot back home for preserving our food and stuff. Zuko rolled his eyes, as if the 2 points should have been obvious together. Which, in retrospect, yeah, they probably should be. Sokka grabbed the last bit of his lunch and crammed it into his mouth. Seeing Zuko finish with his was nearly at the same time, as if he'd been keeping pace. Just how paranoid is this kid? So, you want to spar or something? Sokka asked, accepting the empty plate. The teen's eyes glanced at the machete club, still on the floor by the door. With what? I mean, yeah, only the best of the Water Tribe weaponry. I mean, technically, I'm a real pro at my boomerang, but this isn't exactly prime boomerang practice area. And throwing at you isn't that different from practicing throwing at a tree, so... Zuko looked enraged by that for some reason. Not that... I can dodge a stupid boomerang. Trees can't do that. Sokka gaped at the older teen. Do you want me to throw my boomerang at you? No! Sokka waited for more, but none seemed to be forthcoming, so he just chuckled. Still, a small room, not super great. I think I'll stick with the stabby slashy weapons. Rules are you either use a dull weapon or arm me, Mediman says. Arm you? There are practice weapons, somewhere. Oh yeah, I saw those. You mean I have to go all the way back up there again? I used the 2.5-foot rods. Zuko smirked, amusement shining in his dark eyes. Yeah, finally something to start moving the needle the right way on the evil meter. He made sure to stomp his way up the cave to the hidey hole, hearing a snort of laughter behind him. Hey, wait, evil meter, you're going the wrong way again, stop! He found the weapons and grabbed the ones Zuko had mentioned. When he got back to the cave, Zuko looked unsettlingly settled, as if the conversation had brought him to near panic by the thought of fighting was making him more comfortable. Huh. That was definitely points toward an evil skill. The question was, should it be Zuko's or Jet's? That was a question for another time, before he got sad. Here. He handed over the rods, watching with interest as the older teen swung them and did a few practice moves before settling into a fighting stance. Sokka grabbed his weapons as well, the machete club, molded well into his hand, familiar, well-worn, and often used. It was a weapon that served him well on the tundra, through hunts and fighting off predators who had wandered too close to the buildings. Sure, he hasn't used it much against people before Aang's Avatar adventure, but his dad had given him plenty of warrior training when he'd been 12. That had been mostly with a spear, which was actually a melee weapon. Yeah, I wasn't really surprised when Zuko kicked the weapon out of his hands and across the room within less than a second of him entering the firebender's radius. Zuko simply looked at him, flatly unimpressed, as Sokka ran across the room to grab the weapon off the ground. Really? I wasn't ready! You lunged at me! That doesn't mean I'm ready! That pretty much set the tone for the rest of the sparring. Zuko was just better at hand-to-hand than Sokka. Though the Water Tribe teen was intelligent and unique enough that he was able to get over one on Zuko on occasion, the cavern didn't allow much room for creativity. But whenever there was an opportunity for it, Sokka would find it. It was kind of his thing. Finally, however, Sokka accidentally stepped too close, and before he could really comprehend what was happening, he was trapped against the cold stone wall, his hands empty and the blade of his own weapon against his neck. Sokka said hotly, fighting to keep the timbre of his voice. That was a pretty cool move there. If you could just, maybe give me back my club? And we can start round, 16? No. Okay, well, I get it. You're tired. I'm tired. We can just call it a draw. I'm not... A draw? You only disarmed me once. Look, we can discuss the whole who won thing, Sokka said quickly. Zuko's hands hadn't twitched. Not even to press the blade harder, but his eyes narrowed in anger, and that was not a thing Sokka wanted at all. But maybe in a more comfortable position, if you could just... He waved a hand at the blade at his throat. Not gonna happen, Water Tribe. Jet should have told you not to spar without backup. I mean, he definitely probably did. I wasn't paying a lot of attention, because whenever he talks, I just hear, "Please punch me in my stupid wheat face." Zuko snorted, a smile peeking across his face as though he heard it too. But he quickly schooled his face into a fierce growl. "You should have listened, because now you're my hostage, and you won't be leaving here until I get what I want." Well, that was melodramatic. Did this kid have theater school smuggled here somewhere or something? Then again, Zhao sure did like his angry, "I'm more powerful than you" rants. Maybe it was a Fire Nation thing? Okay, see, communication, we got something. So, what exactly do you want? Wow, that was a really good, "Are you an idiot?" look. Did he practice that? Zuko brandished the arm not holding the machete, chain clinking loudly through the room. Right. You can stop looking at me like that. I know it is a stupid question. This was not good. If there was one thing Sokka really knew about the Fire Nation kid after this, it was even if he wasn't good with conversations, he was really good at fighting and was crazy determined and desperate. So he was pretty securely stuck between a desperate predator and freedom, and Water Tribe warriors knew that that was almost no worse place to be. Wait, not good at conversations? You know who's really good at conversations? Sokka. He could do this. Okay, so I can see where you're going with this. Me, stuck. You're doing this sticking. Eventually it will be the time for this change and shift, and they'll find me and what? You think they'll see this and just let you walk out of here? He scowled harder, but, Sokka noticed, still didn't move the blade any harder into his neck. Of course not. You remain my hostage until I'm far enough away that I can't escape. Okay, and you think you can keep that up for long enough? Your footwork is terrible. I think I can handle it. Okay, 1, rude. 2, they're just going to follow you no matter how far you take me. They don't know what I'm like outside this cave, and neither do you. I won't have a problem losing them. Wow, you seem really confident about that. Okay, cool. We'll check off that part as possible, but probable. Sure. But this whole hostage part isn't going to work. Like, if they're all freedom fighters, it's like 6 against 1, 7 if you count me. I'm fast. I could kill you before the first one of them even got into my radius, and you know that. They won't risk it. Then how will you get the manacle off? They're going to toss me the key, and you're going to unlock it for me. Sokka blinked, surprised. Wow, you put a lot of thought into this. For years. Right, okay. So, getting the manacle off, check. Getting away once you're out of here, check. Only problem is that this whole part isn't going to work. He gestured the blade against his neck. Why not? Because Jet's a psycho. And I'm not one of his freedom fighters, so, there's not a great chance he would care. He wants something from you, or at least from your traveling companions. He can't get it if you're dead. He wants Katara and Aang to fight you. Want to know a great way to achieve that? Letting them see this. Or worse, showing them my dead body. Actually, that'll probably help Jet get his way faster. The firebender was silent for a few moments, breathing heavily, with his eyes darting back and forth. For a moment, Sokka couldn't breathe again as the sword was removed from his throat. Zuko yelled angrily, throwing the machete across the room until it crashed against the steel door at the entrance of the cave. He ranted and raved, pacing back and forth along his chains in desperate fever. Sokka breathed in gasping, relieved breaths now that the weapon was gone. But he didn't move. He hadn't had to really convince the Fire Nation King not to kill him. He just pointed out that it wouldn't actually be helpful, and Zuko had just stopped. Zuko could have been like, "Wahaha, I have no reason not to kill you," and just do it. He hadn't, and now Sokka had his answer. It wasn't the one he thought he'd get, but it was an answer. And now he knew what he needed to plan to do. When the dinner meal came, Sokka sat beside Zuko along the back wall. Zuko liked to tell himself they were still woke with the sun, as any firebender did. He had no way of knowing whether or not that was true, locked away in the cave as he was. He did know that he woke abruptly, usually several hours before breakfast was brought down, though the exact number of hours depended on the layers of clothes his captor wore. He didn't bother asking. Most of them, read not Jet, probably hadn't seen a harm in answering, but he was kind of scared that the answer wouldn't be what he needed to hear, so he chose not to risk it. Still, that meant several hours of morning meditation, channeling flameless chi and berating himself for his failure the day before. No, it wasn't a failure. Jet was getting sloppier and sloppier, and Sokka had given him some things to think about. By the time Jet got sloppy enough, he'd be ready. The others wouldn't let him get hurt. Zuko could. The ex-prince jerked to attention when footsteps sounded down the cave. He frowned. This was early. Really early. Unless he slept in, which was even worse omen than Jet being early. Jet sauntered in with a wide, smug smirk under the wheat which held between his teeth. Figured you'd already be awake, he said, as though it was an insult. The relief shooting through Zuko was so intense he didn't even think to scowl. At least not until Jet was smirking. He remembered pretty quickly after that. What do you want, Jet? The Tantine leaned against the doorway as far from Zuko's chains as he could, while still technically being in the cell. He smirked, a manic kind of victory in his eyes that immediately created a pit in Zuko's stomach. Just wanted to get a good look at what would soon be the last firebender in Gai Pang. The pit widened. What are you talking about? I've finally found a way to get rid of the pestilence of your kind once and for all. Those benders at Sokka can't get to come and fight you? They've agreed to help me fill the reservoir. Get us a nice water source for when the big bad firebenders start scorching the forest. The words were mocking, accommodated by a pair of rolling eyes with a malicious smirk. A little blasting jelly at the foot of the dam. Bye-bye, Gaipan, and so long, Fire Nation. Zuko jumped to his feet. The hole in his chest felt bottomless, and even so it couldn't contain the whole of his horror. You can't do that! Gaipan it's a colony for years. There's non-combatants. There are families there. Children. Innocents. You can't! I can, and I will do a lot more until your kind has lost even more than what you took from the rest of us. He smirked again, filled with a hostile glee at the sight of a frantic, desperate, horrified Zuko screaming at him, struggling like he hadn't since the first month. Zuko wasn't even sure he was saying anything anymore, a blur of nonsensical denials flooding past his lips as he fought against the metal that had held himself for years. Now I have to go. Towns aren't going to flood themselves, and those benders are just so eager to help. Jet left then, leaving Zuko behind to scream until his already raspy voice went hoarse and the blood flipped down a scarred and calloused wrist. His people were out there, dying, and he couldn't do anything about it. He was forced to sit back, helpless and useless and weak, while they all died. Not a spark of flame appeared. Still, he fought, he raged, he yelled, until soft leather boots came running down the cave. Sokka sprinted to the cavern, his eyes extremely wide and mouth gaping as he wrenched the door open. Whoa, what's wrong? Wait, are you bleeding? The Fire Nation teen stared at the Water Tribe boy. For all that the kid protested against being one of Jet's lackeys, he was still here. Jet trusted him, which means that Zuko didn't. He couldn't, but Desperate didn't care about trust. It only cared about exhausting every single possibility and not giving up, not without a fight. Look, I don't trust you and you don't trust me, but you might be slightly less evil than Jet, so I don't have a choice. He breathed, fighting past the despair that threatened. Sokka straightened, his eyes hard. Jet's been extra shifty today. I was going to blow this off to follow him, but then I heard you yelling. What is he up to? He's going to destroy the town. What? He's getting those benders to fill the reservoir, and then he's going to blow it up. It'll flood everything. They won't have time to escape. You can't. He can't. You have to do something. Stop it somehow. He's going to kill them all. Sokka was already moving, forcing his way through the door. Right, we don't have time. I'm not going to let that happen to those people, and I'm not leaving you for Jet to find when his plan doesn't work. Zuko choked on his next breath, mind slamming to a hold of the incomprehensible, the impossible. Suddenly was within his grasp. What? I'm getting you out of here. I mean, I was planning to do that all along. My timeline just didn't account for the absolute crazy, so we're having to move it up a bit. But it's fine. I'm good under pressure. If Zuko could string more than two coherent thoughts together, he would doubt that. But it was only two thoughts circling in his head. Jed's going to flood the town, and Sokka's breaking me out. He felt too stunned, too utterly blindsided by the comment that it took several seconds for him to even hope. Sokka, easily, comfortably, stepped within Zuko's range, and it continued to be as perplexing and unusual as it had been the day before. The casual trust that no one gave him. He still wasn't quite sure what he could do with that trust, but it was a gift he rarely received and almost never gave. So, for the moment, he chose to ignore it, instead directing the other teen to a spot of chain about 1.5 feet from his hand, the weakest link, already half chipped away. Zuko had been carving at it for years whenever rocks broke free from the wall during fights, until the frail stone crumbled into pebbles too small to use. It would have taken months longer before the chunk in the metal would be big enough to be useful. Sokka hesitated, and it could have just been him trying to figure out the angle, or it could have been him changing his mind. But Zuko wasn't about to risk it. Please, As usual, however, he messed it up. He always did, when fear and hope and desperate somehow morphed into more familiar, safe anger. We're wasting time. We need to get out to save the town now. I swear to you on my honor, I will not send anyone after the freedom fighters. I don't even know what stupid cave they live in. The other teen's expression tightened, hardened, and he brought the machete down once, twice, and the metal broke. Sokka held his weapon tightly, as though he wished he could spend a few more smashing it against the ground. But Zuko was already moving. He had failed his mother the night she disappeared. He had failed his father by disrespecting him. He had failed the 41st Division by being unable to sway any minds with the disrespect. And he had failed his uncle when he didn't arrive at Kyoshi as planned. He would not fail Gaipan. He stood and wrapped the length of chain still attached to the manacle around his wrist and tucked one end under to keep it from dragging. Let's go. Sokka nodded, face fixed and solemn. Yeah. Zuko paused, just for a moment, at the space where the slightest divot in the cave floor marked the spot where he had worn it with years of pacing at the edge of his leash. Though he knew the tether was gone, he couldn't help the flash of fear that he would somehow just bounce back, unable to go any further. He took a single, meditative breath, and ran out of the cave as quickly as his legs could take him. Zuko let out a huge gasping breath as he found himself in sunlight for the first time in years. Eyes nearly closed as he squinted at a light so much brighter than any torch could ever create. Any tears that leaked from the corner of his eyes could be attributed to the brightness and nothing more. Not the full sun warming his skin and his chi for the first time in years. Not that rush of hope filling a space in his heart that had been nearly empty, made hollow by years of fear. Sokka stood off to the side, either respecting the teen's need for a moment of peace and feeling too awkward to comment. Zuko couldn't allow himself more than a moment to relax. He instead utilized the emotional control granted by countless hours of meditation and turned to the Warrior Tribe teen. Where's the reservoir? Sokka started and stopped, shaking his head. We'll never make it in time. It's on the other side of the forest. Jed's been gone for hours before my shift started. Then what should we do? We aren't far from Gaipan. We may not be able to save the town, but we can get the people who live there out. Zuko nodded. Let's go. The pair ran through the forest, both sighing in relief when they spotted the roofs of the still above-water town in the valley below. Sokka pointed at one of the guard towers and yelled between gasps, slowing to a pace. Can you, flame out a distress signal or something? Get their attention? Zuko stopped as well. He tried, but he knew even before he did that nothing would happen. Though it was reacting to the sun, his chi felt just as slow and sluggish as it had in the cave. Nothing, not even the smallest puff of smoke, would form in his hands. No. Sokka let out an aggravated cry. Come on, dude. I'm not going to, tell Jet your secret or anything. There's no point in hiding anymore. This is to save your people. I can't, Sokka. Zuko ran his hands angrily through his greasy hair. I'm not healthy, he yelled, unable to explain it further. Explain it better. His fingers came out with clumps of hair that had fallen out of his thinning locks, and brandished the dark strands to the younger teen as proof. I can't firebend. I haven't been able to in over a year. Sokka's mouth dropped open in silent shock for a moment. He gulped and nodded. We keep running then. Zuko nodded. They kept running.